Hello.
Welcome to Heal the World Show podcast, brought to you by the Healing Institute. I'm Parmelia Parham. I'm the founder and the CEO of the Healing Institute, and we are out to heal the world. We are doing a very large job, but we're up for it. And every week, I invite a guest co host to come and talk about how they help to heal the world. Now, I've been using holistic ways of being well and staying well for well over 20 years, and it works. So, we want other people to know that there are alternative ways for them to be healthy. And, that's the reason I called it an institute, because I'm very passionate about educating people on how they can be well on their health journey. We have a medical model that is broken. And so we need to have these alternative ways for people so that they know there is hope. There is hope for everyone. So I designed the Healing Institute because I'm passionate about creating a proactive wellness society. I believe we've been a reactive illness society way too long. So it's time for us to shift that up and become a proactive wellness society. And you might wonder why this is so important to me. So I want people not to have to go through the experience and tragedy that we had with our family a few years ago when my mom passed away at a very early age. She was only 61. And it was due to complications because she'd been on a medication for a very, very long time. And not once did her physician ever tell her that being on the medication for a long time could compromise her kidneys. So, unfortunately, we lost her right before Christmas. It was December the 15th. And so not only was it a tragedy that she died so young, but also that my children did not get to know their grandmother. And I just don't want that happening for any other family. So that's my why as to why I'm so passionate about creating the Healing Institute with our alternative and fabulous holistic practitioners that are there to help you if you're looking for an alternative way with whatever's happening with you, whether it's physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. You're looking for guidance, we are here for you. And so this month is July. Today is our last Friday in July. We have been celebrating July, Joyful July. We've been celebrating because we've been doing this podcast for a whole year. I can't believe it's a whole year, but today is our 55th episode. And I am just delighted to have our guest co host today, Lisa Morel. So, welcome, Lisa. We're so happy to have you here today. And we're going to be talking about self-care and and specifically to prevent burnout. And I know a lot of people are experiencing that. So tell us just a little bit about yourself, Lisa.
Thank you. It is quite a privilege to be here. It's my honor. And I wholeheartedly agree with everything you said. And I do believe the body, has its own way of healing itself, given the proper supports. So I am sorry about your mother, but I really honor and applaud your mission and your vision and your reach to the world. So I have been in the behavioral health field counseling for 30 years. I had an experience where I was a manager for Johns Hopkins and started out the job at the top of my game. And within about 9 or 10 months, felt like my body was completely giving out on me. And it was, just one thing out of balance, which was working, too many hours in a week. And then it was a domino effect kind of cascading that affected every other aspect of my life, which I can go into that story. But that got me interested in holistic health. I'd been doing the life coaching starting in 2004. But once I had that experience working for Hopkins and getting so almost ill after starting out in my early 30s at the top of my game, and it took less than a year, it got me interested in supporting my health holistically. So I went to New York and I studied with the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, studied holistic health, and I became a holistic health counselor, started working in the coaching in 2007. And basically I did that all the way up to the pandemic. And then that was when kind of the second part of my story, the burnout specialty, arose because of the 3 years starting with the pandemic. I happened to be in a job for a health department, and it just was a management job with a lot of responsibility. And because I do have a strong work ethic, and I want to say that passion can be a double-edged sword. If you don't, yeah, if you don't really know how to kind of to me, I think of it almost like a wild horse. You kind of need to know how to rein it in. So I really wanted to do well by the people I was managing. I really loved them. I had a heart for it, but I took it too far and didn't set enough boundaries. And the pandemic, while other people, like my husband, for instance, were reporting how relaxed they were, they could just recharge. They didn't have as many commitments. I was glued to my computer, and it was a grueling, no escape, the work days. And again, I allowed it. But that set the stage for about 3 years in a row. I went on to another job that was similar with crazy hours. And I really burned out. And it's been a long road back. So my mission is to specifically have people focus on their self-care so they don't go down the path I did. And they actually prevent burnout before they get there. But if they get there, then I can help them with the recovery. But I want to say that if you take one message home from this today, it would be that self-care is the prescription for both burnout prevention as well as recovery. Self-care, self-care, self-care.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That is so important. And I don't know what I was raised that if I wanted do something for myself, I was selfish.
Selfish.
Yes. And that has been such a huge paradigm shift for me, as well as I know for a lot of women, because we are trained as young girls and young women to give and give and give and give. And we're not trained to be aware of the fact that we could burn out. So I love your message and I love the work that you're doing. It's so very important. And, those of us that have that workaholic tendency, we need to know how to rein it in and how to put things in our life. And also and offer those types of things that we can help our clients with so that they don't go through that. So tell us a little bit about some of your clients and how you've been able to, the results of working with you.
Well, one thing I would like to say is that I am a big one, a student of all healing arts as well as forms of self-improvement. If anything, I probably can go, too far on the end of the spectrum with that. So in my research and in the things that I've studied, I noticed, and when I got off the crazy train last year, 2023, and kind of stepped back to heal and to do a kind of a reset in my life, I wanted to share this message. And what I noticed was that a lot of the people that were doing similar types of work as myself, they had the 6 pillars of self-care, or, the 7 steps to resolve burnout. And I will never say that those things aren't legitimate. I mean, everything I've seen has a lot of value and a lot of legitimacy. But what I want to say is that I feel, and this is just from my own experience, everybody's situation is probably a little bit different. It's going to be different if you have children than if you don't. It's going to be different if you're married versus if you're not. It's going to be different if you have a large circle It's going to be different depending on your age. You probably have a lot more natural resilience, most of us, in your 20s, 30s, and 40s than you do in the years beyond. So all that is to say that I like to individualize it. And instead of like the 7 steps to give you to heal this, because then I could just put out a blog post and be done with it. I think it's very much a dialogue. And as coaching, we learned we're not supposed to be the sage on the stage, we're the guide on the side. And I believe in that because, you know, if I'm working with you, you have the wisdom. But the main thing that I've noticed that I help clients with, whether it was the life coaching, I also do relationship coaching, and especially the health coaching with now a focus on burnout, is gaining clarity. So, you know, the first thing we would do is look at your lifestyle and look at, you know, where is it out of balance? And there's so many things that are tied in with burnout, and they're big kind of like concepts or issues. What am I talking about? I'm talking about boundary setting, the need for that. I'm talking about people-pleasing tendencies. I'm talking about perfectionism. Me, I had all 3. So that's one
I can relate.
I mean, I can say that, you know, I have lived this. So that's one thing in kind of crafting my message and changing my focus in my coaching business, is that there's, you know, nobody can take this away from me, because unfortunately, you know, I got here, you know, through hard knocks.
Well, and you know, Lisa, I love the fact that you're talking about individualizing for your clients. I think that is really important. And, you know, to take anything away, as you mentioned, from, you know, the 7 steps or the 5 pillars or whatever, but sometimes that is something, you know, one person might need just 2 steps or 3 pillars. So when you're actually considering who the person is that you're working with, and the fact that you're adjusting whatever you're offering them and the advice you're giving them based on what they need. And that is so important. You know, certainly at the Healing Institute, that's what we do with our clients. We are looking at them as a whole person. So whatever their needs are, we are, you know, I mean, we have many modalities and a good number of practitioners on the site. So, but we're a community of practitioners. So if somebody came to me for body code work, but I thought, oh, well, they could definitely utilize the work that Lisa does, then, you know, we would recommend to the clients that there's these other modalities. So we're always looking at we're always considering what the client's needs are first. So I love that.
I love that. And I think, you know, our mission is shared. To me, service is a privilege, and I would do it if I didn't have to work to support myself. I would still do it in some way because I'm that passionate about it. And in preparing for this, I looked over your lovely website again, and I was really excited when I saw you talking about, you know, emotions and the energy and, you know, how it shows up in the body, because I am that was probably how I became interested in alternative health. That's what it was called back in the 90s when I first started studying it. We're talking, of course, 30 years ago. But it is all about energy and you know, burnout and self-care. Burnout is largely looking at energy management, you know.
Yeah. And emotional management as well.
Yes. Oh,
and
yes.
that isn't, it's not something that our society has you know, we weren't raised with that. We were just raised with well, first of all, have no clue. We had no clue that our subconscious is really running the show. The conscious brain is only 5% of what's going on. So that was a huge aha for me when I first started studying energy healing and emotional healing. And it's so important for us to be bringing that message to what I call mainstream society. Because if you're not having an emotional mental, so you're not searching, first of all, that's my number one. Always be curious, always be searching. And if something's not right, you're the best person who knows what's going on in your body. You might not know why that might be happening, but you know something is happening. And so find out what that might be. And that's so important for us to take that responsibility. And I don't know if you feel this way, but I certainly felt with the pandemic when all of a sudden we were, had masks on, we were social distancing. If we had a cold or a flu or something, we weren't going out to in society. We all of a sudden, in my mind, we were taking responsibility for our own physical health. And
Mhm.
I think that was huge. I think
Mhm.
that's really, really important. I think maybe we've kind of got away from it a little bit since, the pandemic. That was 4 years ago. But, I don't know if you remember this, but, lining up to get into the grocery store, we had to be, so many feet apart from each other. Everybody was
Yes.
wearing masks. In our grocery stores here on Vancouver Island, there was only so many people allowed into the grocery store at a time.
Yes.
So
Mhm.
they were trying to, make sure that they were following all the rules that they possibly could. And I
Mhm.
think that was a good thing because I think people then started to think about more more about taking responsibility for their own health and not just giving it away, because
Yes.
I truly believe that we've given our power away. Not to say there's anything wrong with allopathic medicine, if I get hit with a car, I want that ambulance there right now.
That's
But
right.
and I definitely, think that there's a place for us to be together as a blend. But for
Yes.
so many years, it was just all about the medical, the way we've been raised, that medical model, which we now know is broken. And so, because they were looking at symptoms, they weren't looking at the root cause. But
Exactly.
the work that you're doing and the work that our practitioners do, we look at what the root cause is. Okay, you have a symptom. It's showing up in, stress or anxiety or you're feeling however you're feeling. You have no energy because you're feeling burnt out. Well, why? Why is that happening? Yeah,
Yes. Yes, I want to just speak to that point about the symptoms and covering them up.
hmm
When I was in my 20s, I was having various things, some allergies, a couple other symptoms that were aggravating. So, I did what everybody does, go to the doctor, talk about the issues. At one point, now I did not listen to them. I took the prescriptions, and then that's, thank goodness, around the time I discovered alternative health practices, complementary medicine. But I realized I was 26, 27 years old at the most. If I was listening to my doctors, I was going to be on about 6 different medications at that time in my life, my mid 20s. And, none of the things that were going on were life altering. It wasn't like I could deal with it. It was just annoying. And some of the medications they were prescribing were because if I took the one, it was going to give me problems in this other area. And I just thought, this is no way. And that's when I became very, very passionate about, being your doctor's, your medical team's partner in your own health. And, you can follow blindly along, but, like you've experienced with your mother, and I've seen it in my life, there is usually a price to pay with prescription drugs. Sometimes they are absolutely a lifesaver, like you said.
Right.
But pharmaceuticals are heavy duty, and they do have side effects.
Yeah, most definitely. And I know, in my mother's instance, if she was alive, she'd be 99 now. So, she believed her doctor knew what, anybody who she was a very smart woman, but she didn't have a high education. So anybody who had a degree of some kind, she thought they were right. And oftentimes not even thinking about or even taking into consideration her own intuition. Not that we even talked about, we didn't know that word back then, or if we did, we didn't know what it was. I knew something was going on. I just didn't have the language for it.
Mhm.
So, she just did what she thought was the best thing to do.
Of course.
And didn't even ask the question as to whether or not
Yeah.
this, talking about side effects those many years ago.
Right. Right.
We didn't talk about the side effects
Mhm.
of prescribed medication. So thank goodness we are at least in a society now. And as much as, we might curse the internet. There is a lot of information there, good, bad, and ugly, but at least we can look, we can start searching, and not to take that specific information and include it in your health regime, but at least to ask questions.
Yes,
To
I agree.
be curious enough to ask, then you can ask questions.
And I will say, this just reminded me of something. It's really a little bit off topic, but I think it's a good point, that you can take everything too far. And for instance, I'm a big fan of supplements, and supplements seem very innocuous, but I just want to also have a kind of a public service announcement disclaimer that certain things you do need to do your own research, because what's good for me may not be good for you, or what's good for me in my 30s may not be good for me, the same supplement, in my 50s. And so, for instance, there was a time I took evening primrose oil, typically very good for women, especially in like perimenopause. Well, I found out after further study that in some people, evening primrose oil can cause seizures. So I would never want, as a health coach, so this is the health coach talking, I would never want to suggest that to a client. And God forbid, they're the 1 in 10,000 that has a seizure. Therefore, my message is just anything a health coach would recommend, or anything you find on the internet, do check it out with your doctor. Check it out with sources that are credible and that you can trust. Because even if it's from nature, cyanide is from nature. It's you know what I'm saying.
Exactly. Yes. Well, and that's so I love your point about that, because definitely all of us are individuals, and we all have individual bodies that react different ways.
Exactly.
So you could take a supplement that works really well for you. I could take the same supplement that doesn't work well for me. And that's why it's so very important. Many years ago, when I was standing a lot because I was a receptionist, a hostess at a resort, and in the dining room, and my knee was bothering me. And so I had a doctor then. I don't have a doctor now, but then I had a doctor, and he's like, "Oh, well, it's probably, arthritis, just take Tylenol." And I was like, I'm not sure if I want to take Tylenol every day.
Yeah.
I just, my intuition was like, I'm not sure about that.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to our health food store, where I buy all my supplements now. And I asked a very informative nutritionist who was working, and I said, "Do you have anything else that you could recommend?" And she
Curcumin.
yeah,
Yeah.
she said, she said, yes, there's this natural one that is not going, it's going to help if it is arthritis that you're developing. It's going to help with your joints, and it doesn't have the side effects that Tylenol have.
Yeah.
So, we have to be tuned into our bodies as well. That's another thing.
Exactly.
I'm just running this ticker tape along the bottom just so people can connect with you. This is Lisa's LinkedIn profile. So that's a great way to connect with her. And we don't seem to have anybody in the chat today, but oftentimes it doesn't show up. I don't know why. And so after we get off out of the studio, Lisa and I'll go back into the event, and we'll connect with anyone who's leaving messages and leaving questions in the event. So sometimes that happens. I'm just going to check the chat again, but no, nothing.
In the meantime, I wanted to go back to something you mentioned about the whole issue, to piggyback on the symptoms and not paying attention, because especially in the United States, if you don't know this, we are a pill culture. Got a headache, take the Tylenol. Need a good time, had a bad day, have a Budweiser. I mean, this is the message that social media, advertising has drilled into our heads. And it's very pervasive, and it starts, we take these messages in. And so, like you, yes, I believe that you need to not look at it that way. Our bodies is where our emotions, of course, are stored. And so it's a messenger. The pains and the aches are there to tell us about something that we're doing, something that is out of balance. And anytime you're out of balance, again, that's why I said passion can be a kind of a double-edged sword, because passion is great, but you can take that too far and therefore cause something to get out of balance. I'm very passionate about my work, but it's easy for me to scrimp on sleep because I'm so engaged in what I'm doing and it's midnight and I don't want to stop. Or I could maybe ignore, a relationship, God forbid my husband or my cat. Neither one would be happy. And I have gotten bitten for ignoring my cat. But you know what I'm saying? You can, be too busy to feed yourself well with healthy food. We call it slow food because it takes time to make food that's healthier for your body. These days, there's obviously a lot of good prepared foods that are a lot more expensive, but I think you understand my point. So,
absolutely. Yeah. It's important. It's important to take that time to prepare a good meal and take the time to sit down and enjoy it, because that's helping the digestive system. And, I often mention, and this is my word, why has there been, I ask this question, why has there been such a tsunami? That's my being dramatic description of Alzheimer's and dementia. Well, now the science is out about the direct relationship between gut health and brain health. Now we've never, I can't remember when the study finally came out or the findings finally came out. Something that I've known about for a few years, but we never correlated those before. Our gut health or stuff, that was one thing. Our brain health was something else. We never put the two together.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just we've been eating crap and junk food for the last 50 years. So it's no wonder now that we have generations that are experiencing brain deficiencies because of what they've been putting in their bodies. So
it's frightening.
It is frightening. I think it's very important for us to understand how our bodies work and how we can keep them as healthy as possible.
Yes. And that reminds me of something I learned in my fabulous health coaching program at Institute for Integrative Nutrition. This is just for somebody listening to this who gets scared and it seems overwhelming, like, I can't do all this, I have a normal life. We were taught the 80-20 rule, which is in other areas of life as well, but it applies to your nutrition as well. If you are eating a healthy whole foods diet, generally free of processed foods, and it's good, healthy food, 80% of the time, 20% of the time, you can have your chips and salsa and, maybe a glass of wine or two, everything in moderation, even moderation.
Absolutely. I'm glad you raised that because that's so important. Sometimes when we think we need to release some pounds, we have to go, completely off of all the good stuff we like.
Yes.
But it's not necessary as long as you mentioned, as long as 80% of the time, we're looking at our health and looking at what we're eating, what we're putting in our bodies, what we're doing with our bodies. We're moving, we're doing exercise, going for walks, whatever that is, whatever that looks like, that is going to help our bodies retain the health that we have. So yeah I love it. Very good. We're getting to the bottom of the half hour here. I can't believe that 30 minutes just went really fast. Do you have any other little gems that you would like to share with our audience?
If I wanted to end on one point, it would be this, that the biggest thing I learned in my experience of burnout and working my way back is that we're talking about a way that people who end up with burnout, it's a way you do life. Mm-hmm. So to look at the decisions you're making, to look at how you're spending your time, to look at your energy management and see where hopefully it's just small tweaks. So I help people with burnout prevention if they're, on the early side of the continuum. If they're on the far side like I was and they're charred to a crisp like I was, then we start working on a plan to work your way back, always taking into account your responsibilities.
Yeah, absolutely. And oftentimes you do need to do those baby steps
Yeah, most of the time. Yes.
because we're actually creating brain to be, so that we can now embrace this different way of living. And if we are looking at a huge amount of change, it's so overwhelming, as we all know, we won't do it. It's just too overwhelming.
A
So
thousand,
the baby steps are really, I believe, are really, really important.
a
Yeah.
1000%. Yes, yes.
Well, thank you, Lisa, so much for being our guest co-host today. So we've connecting with Lisa on LinkedIn for sure. And our vision is to create a community of expert health practitioners that are working with you, just with you, what you need. So we design and create whatever it is that you need for you. It's not a cookie cutter. It's not one fits all. So our motto with the Healing Institute is service with love, and we truly believe that we are in service for you. So we have a big ask. We're out to heal the world. We would love you to reach out to all your community and let them know about the Healing Institute. Please share this podcast with them and let them know that we are out to heal the world, and you got to meet another amazing